great to see so many people here, especially after we had a break in December. I'm Linda Williams, and this is a Science Cafe. And if you're here for music, they follow us, and please stay for our program as well. You're certainly welcome. The Science Cafes were started in the late 90s in Europe, in pubs and restaurants and that kind of thing. And they had experts come and talk about their research. And then eventually the idea came to the United States, and we've kind of adapted it to fit what we like and the things that we do. So we have scientists and experts in the field. And we have a lot of different things that we do. Well, first of all, let me pass around. This is the listserv that I send out. Usually at the most 3 emails. 2 weeks out, I'll say, in 2 weeks our topic is whatever it is. 1 week out, and then if I remember, the day before or the morning of. So if you're not already on it, sign up if you want. Please print, because sometimes I guess wrong and then you don't get yours, and then I get bounce backs and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that I'd like to tell people is that I really don't like heckling. So if you feel the urge to heckle, take it outside. And that also applies to being on your soapbox, because I got to admit I have my soapbox too, and it's science, so I'm lucky because I get to talk first. But if you have like one time, the very first Science Cafe we did was on Maumelle water, and of course, that's a pretty important thing everybody has really definite feelings about. Everyone was on their best behavior, but I thought about that, and I thought, if I was really in the fight to make sure that our water was good, I'd really want to. But the problem with that is that one person will then ask every question of the night. So in order for everybody to get a chance to ask a question, we try not to let you get on your soapbox. So try not to do that. Let's see. There's no dumb questions. Oh gosh, these are for reading. And so what I try to do is, if we have a lull, which this large of a group, we're not going to have any lulls, I'll bet you. I try to ask a question, because I don't want anybody ever to think that their questions are not good enough or something. Because I come from a little town in Nevada, is where I grew up, and first kid to go to college. And I had an aunt who was not my favorite. But she used to say things to me like, well, there you go, you work at NASA and you come home and lord it over us. Because other family people would say, what are you doing at NASA? What's going on? And I would tell them. But after getting that comment a couple times, it kind of squelched me. So I don't want anybody ever here to feel like they're being squelched because they ask a question that's important to them, that they're interested in. So I will try to ask a really dumb question so that you or your spouse can go home and say, at least my question wasn't as dumb as Linda's. So there you go. Please come on in. There are seats hither and yon, and I've already gone around and asked everybody who might have an open seat if you can sit with them. So if you see an open seat, sit down. Let's see, what else? We have an outreach. We pass around, oh, that's right. We pass around the speaker, and we call it Silver for Science. So if you're so inclined, feel free to put silver or other things in here. And what we do with it is, I have a separate account at Bank of America that's Science Cafe, and we use that to buy science supplies for little bitty schools that don't have any money for their science programs. So I'll start that around as well. And then also on our website, sciencecafélr.com. Of course, you can always see our schedule, and I've just put up the 2012 schedule, so if you want to check that. You also go to the outreach page. You can see where to email if you know teachers that might want to ask about supplies, because UAMS and some of the other campuses that we have as sponsors, they have extra stuff. And I've been contacting them and finding out and trying to list there in a database on our website what kind of things they have. Test tubes, petri dishes, pipettes, rulers, things that seem pretty simple but people don't have and they don't have a budget for. So send them there. Also, we've started collecting from UAMS, from UCA, and anybody else that wants to give them to them, those really big science posters. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to a science conference, but when people do poster sessions, they get this big poster. It's usually 4 by 6 or bigger sometimes. Anyway, people use those, and then after a year or two, they're done with them. And so one of the science teachers in North Little Rock asked me one time what people did with those. And so I asked around, and they gave them all to me. So now I have a ton of those. I have them listed, all the titles, and I've tried to put them by topic: diabetes, cardiovascular, cancer, whatever. So if you go on there and you see some of those and you think you know of a teacher that might be able to use them in their classroom, because this is real science done in Arkansas, and actually I think I have a few from Kentucky too, but they work here now. That way they can show the kids, this is what the supplies look like, this is what the intro looks like. When they get ready to do science fair, they'll have an actual example. So please advertise that if you don't mind, because I'd really like to give those away, and like I say, I've got tons now. So that's another thing that we can kind of do an outreach for the science teachers. Let's see, we also have a vendor that helps with what I call science gear. Like this is one of the bags that has our Science Cafe logo on it. If you want something like that, they've got polo shirts and t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. That's on the website too, and that money goes towards helping into that same pot where we buy science supplies. Let's see. Okay, so in March of this year is our 5-year birthday. So I'm pretty excited about that. Can you believe, some of you that have been coming a long time, that we've been doing this for 5 years? I'm pretty excited about that. So thanks. So Dorothy takes most of the credit for that. Anyway, I do want to tell you, I have to tell you, if I didn't have Dorothy, I would be insane, worse than I am. But what we're going to do is, as I mentioned last time, we're going to do a joint, I can't remember what the word is I'm thinking of, a companion science cafe along with a program that NOVA is doing at the same time. And we're doing Are We Alone in the Universe? And so we'll have physicists, we'll have some philosophers, we'll have different people like that. But we're also going to have a big birthday cake. NOVA is sending me all these kinds of goodies to hand out, and maybe we'll ask a couple of crazy science questions and you can win stuff. One of our sponsors, and I'm going to contact the rest of them, our sponsor, the Arkansas Biosciences Institute, they're going to give me goodies to hand out too. And so it's going to be a really fun night. We're going to see if we can make it a little bit longer that night. We'll have to work with the band that usually follows us and see if that might be a possibility. If not, we'll have to go really fast. But hopefully we might be able to extend just a little bit that night. So come, that'll be a fun party. Let's see, what else? Oh, okay, so another project that I just started, I mentioned to a few people before we got started. Some of you know that I write books also as my side thing, science books and things. And I decided recently, or I've been thinking about it a while, but I finally got motivated, to write a book about basically how to Science Cafe. And I want to expand it into how to share science with the public. So I would really value your opinion on what do you think we do right, what do you think we could do better, all that kind of stuff. And I'm really looking for a catchy title. So if you can think of something really fun, email it to me, and if that's the one I end up picking, I'll definitely acknowledge you and that kind of thing. But this Science Cafe, from what I hear from the national group, is one of the longest running science cafes in the nation. And so that's kind of exciting. And the reason I decided to do this book is because now that we have that credential, I seem to get a lot of calls from people all over the country now saying, hey, I found out you do that Science Cafe thing, could you tell me how to do it? And so at first it was really fun and stuff, but after being on the phone for several hours with people at different times, I got to thinking, wouldn't it be easier to do an ebook or something like that I could direct them to, and that they could get the same information? And so that's one of the reasons I started thinking about this. So if you have good ideas on that, or you think, well, gee, I wish you'd always thought about doing this, please tell me, because I want to offer people that are also around the nation thinking about doing this as much information to get going as possible. So I think that might be everything on my list. Yes, it is. Let me introduce our moderator extraordinaire, Dorothy Graves, who is an assistant research professor in the Department of Hematology and Oncology in the Winthrop P. Rockefeller Cancer Institute. Dorothy has also been an anchor and a reporter for KUAR and NPR, and she's been doing, or has done NPR in the nation's capital as well, right? In the East somewhere.
Well, I've done national stories.
Okay.
So I've filed stories from here that were played nationally during like Morning Edition and things like that.
Okay. Well, see, I told you she was extraordinary. So let me turn this over without any more introduction to Dorothy, and Dorothy will handle everything else from the rest of the time. I'm going to be kind of sitting right over here, kind of in the middle, watching for questions and looking for people that might need a seat and all that kind of other maitre d' kind of stuff. If you can't hear back in the corner, I'll watch, so raise your hand or something and I'll adjust the sound so that we make sure, because I didn't do the sound check tonight. So that's it. Just welcome all of our speakers and welcome Dorothy.
All right.
guys for being here. This is great. This is a great turnout. A little bit of official business we have to do really quickly. I need to acknowledge our sponsors. We've got great sponsors. Like Linda said, this is our 5th year, so we're very grateful. The Arkansas Academy of Sciences, the Arkansas Biosciences Institute, Southwestern Energy, Vucare and the Afterthought, which is where you are. Our waitstaff does a great job taking care of people as this is going on, so please remember them at the end of the evening. UALR, UAMS, the UAMS Graduate School, the Historic Arkansas Museum, the Central Arkansas chapter of the American Chemical Society, and KUAR FM 89, which is our local NPR affiliate where we do the companion radio show about 30 minutes, actually an hour prior to this. We were on the air 6:05 to 6:30, so you can always get a little sneak peek of what we're going to be talking about here if you tune into KUAR. Next month, reminder, we're here the 4th Tuesday of every month, except for December, July, and August. We take those vacations because we can't get speakers because all the speakers are on vacation. But next month we'll be talking about the science of sleep, and that will be on February 28th. So join us for that. Last thing, turn off your cell phones, put them on vibrate if you haven't done that already. The way the evening is going to go is I've got my 3 panelists next to me. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. They're going to talk for about 5 or 10 minutes to let you know why they're a panelist, what their area of expertise is, and just give you some background on what their interests are. And then after they've each had a chance to talk to you a little bit, the rest of the evening is audience questions. And so you all will pretty much drive the conversation for the majority of the evening. It's my job to find you in the audience and call on you when your hand is raised. I have a light in my eye and a big divider there. So if I'm not seeing you, or if there's someone around you who I'm not seeing, just help me out. There's nothing personal, but I just have a hard time seeing out there. Okay? So for the speakers, the one instruction, you have 2 instructions. Number 1, hold the microphone up close to your mouth so that everybody can hear, because we have some sound issues here. And number 2, when you get a question from the audience, repeat it into the microphone, because otherwise people will not be able to hear across the room. Okay?
And number 3, turn the mic on. Right.
Oh yeah, turn the mic on. You know, that's a good starting place. Okay, so to start with, to my left is Dietrich Duke. He was my guest on the KUAR FM 89 radio show. He was fantastic, which you will be able to listen to that on the KUAR.org website here in a couple of days if you want to. But Dietrich is in interactive media sales with Aristotle Interactive. He has been a natural with technology since he was very young. As a youth, he was attracted to technical devices, and he was an early gamer at the age of 3. Because of his early technical proficiency, as he matured, Dietrich often taught the courses that his teachers couldn't teach, both in Mac and PC platforms. Dietrich took a wide variety of programming and networking classes in high school and spent most of his time in network centers, becoming proficient in routing and Cisco equipment. Dietrich's first websites hit the web early in the visual internet history. He's developed websites and applications since 1995. He's worked in network administration for financial services as well as internet service providers. He has successfully owned his own businesses since 1997 in both hardware repair, installation, and internet technologies. He is certified in several connectivity technologies and applications, including an A+ certification for hardware and software, and MSDN certified with Windows applications, and is also a certified MOUS. His notable accomplishments include traveling to Khabarovsk. You know, I looked that up on the internet for pronunciation and it just left me. Khabarovsk, Russia, as part of the United States Information Agency and Ohio State University's Cultural Exchange Program, where he became a citizen diplomat sharing the United States way of life and culture with the Russian public. Dietrich worked for former President Bill Clinton's successful presidential campaign in 1996. As an activist, he supports several national and local nonprofit organizations. As part of this support, he is a den leader in the local Cub Scout pack and volunteers his time in civic and philanthropic endeavors. Please join me in welcoming Dietrich Duke.
Thank you.
Now it's your turn to talk.
All right. Well,
and hold your microphone up close.
I think I'll start this off here. I would say that as far as my history and what really turns me on about technology is the fact that it's always changing. There's always something new out there to learn and to figure out and to play with and to really just, interact with in every way you possibly can.
Got your microphone up close all the
Close enough,
time.
man.
There you go. There you
I need a
go.
little clip or something. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
No, but when I was growing up, I had a computer since I was 2 or 3 years old, an old Commodore VIC-20, and really learned how to use it from there. Switched to Macintosh and tinkered around on a Mac for a while, then switched back to PC and just kind of self-taught myself quite a bit. During high school, you know, schools are usually a few years behind where technology really is, so everything I had learned on my own, you know, it was just very easy for me to share it with my classmates, and it just came to the point where they were like, well, you know, why don't you teach this, and you know, we'll sit back and watch. So I did a little bit of student teaching in the day, and you know, as I progressed in my career, I worked for financial companies. I worked for internet providers, WorldLinks, Aristotle, several others. Owned my own business doing web design, PC repair. Starting back in 1995 when you had the old framed websites, and it was just really crazy back then. So it all kind of leads up to now where I'm doing interactive sales with Aristotle, and I do a lot of technology stuff with, you know, websites and mobiles and kind of connected appliances and such. So, you know, if there's anything new coming out, like what came out at the Consumer Electronics Show with the washer and dryers with an iPad app or an iPhone app that you can control your laundry with. You know, that kind of stuff is what I'm really interested in keeping up with. So, you know, in the field, I can, you know, you have a company that might be able to work with that, you know, go from there.
So what does interactive media sales mean for Aristotle Interactive?
Websites, online marketing, social networking, anything interactive really that has to do with the internet and, you know, marketing and media, you know, print, radio, kiosk, and a little bit everything that could possibly be web-based and even print-based. You know, a little bit of print stuff too. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Everybody, Dietrich Duke. Okay, so my next panelist is Charles Jones, who is the Director of Operations at the Little Rock National Airport. His love of flying started when he was 14 and was instrumental in his 29-year active duty career in the United States Air Force that started at the age of 17. Even though his primary duties were in the medical field, the GI Bill enabled him to pursue his passion of flight and obtain a commercial pilot license with single and multi-engine land, rotorcraft, helicopter, and instrument airplane ratings. Charles was awarded a Master of Aeronautical Science degree with honors from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a double major in aviation safety and airport operations management. His most recent accomplishment was completing the rigorous requirements set by the American Association of Airport Executives for the award of certified member status. Please join me in welcoming Charles Jones.
Thank you. I started out pretty young, learning that flight was my passion. I was 9 years old, and I had a charity flight where it was a penny a pound, and I got to sit next to the pilot, and all we did was go up and fly around. It was probably 5 minutes, but it seemed like it was an hour and a half, and it was just the best thing in my life, and I said, I want to learn how to do that. So while I was working as a busboy, I was saving up my money, and finally at the age of 14, I had enough money to where I could go get my first flight lesson, and that started my career, you know, flying as a hobby, and also, you know, pointed me towards the Air Force, which enabled me to do other flying throughout the world. And, you know, as I got close to retirement, I decided, what do I want to do now? You know, I wanted to be in the medical field. I worked in the medical field for 29 years, and I thought, I want to work in an airport. So I decided to go to Embry-Riddle, finish up my bachelor's, and then I got my master's. And I was lucky to get a position over at Fort Smith Airport as a director of operations there. And then 16 months later, I came over to Little Rock to be the director of operations here at Little Rock. I do not work for the FAA. I do not work for TSA. Just want to make that clear. Every time anybody knows that I work at the airport, they're like, oh, do you work at the tower? No, I'm part of the airport. Oh, so you're TSA? And I said, no, I work at the airport. Basically, the people that work for me, we do all the safety checks for the runway lighting, the runway pavement, taxiways. We're responsible for the security of the perimeter fence And I'm also over the landside operations, which is the parking lots there at the airport. So it's a pretty big job, and I enjoy it. I'm hooked at the hip 24/7, so if this buzzes too much, I may have to step off to the side and see what's going on, but I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've been with the airport for a while, haven't you?
Coming up on 5 years.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, yeah. My final panelist is Mike Douglas. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Chemistry and Biology from Southwestern University and his PhD from St. Louis University. He serves as the director of the UAMS BioVentures and professor of biochemistry and molecular biology in the UAMS Graduate School and College of Medicine. UAMS meaning University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Prior to 2006, he served in various university, public, and private organizations in St. Louis, Missouri, including at Washington University. He served as Associate Vice Chancellor for Research and Director of the Office of Technology Management. In the private sector, he has served as Chief Executive and Scientific Officer of Novactyl, is that correct? That's correct. Novactyl Incorporated, a clinical stage pharmaceutical development company. From 1993 to 1998, he was the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board of Sigma Diagnostics, a multinational clinical diagnostics company. And prior to all of this, he served as Professor and Chairman of Biochemistry and Biophysics, and in the curriculum in Genetics and Molecular Biology and Biotechnology at the University of North Carolina Medical School, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and advanced through the ranks at the University of Texas Medical Schools in San Antonio and UT Southwestern in Dallas. Mike continues his personal research interests and has authored numerous peer-reviewed scientific articles and is an elected member of different scientific and professional societies. He maintains active positions on various civic, corporate, academic, and scientific advisory boards in the Midwest and abroad. He is a decorated veteran of the Vietnam conflict. He's married to Joanne and has 3 grown children, Hannah, Peter, and Sarah. Please join me in welcoming Mike Douglas.
Thank you, guys. One point I will make, actually, just to follow on to Linda's comments. Little Rock, Arkansas is the perfect laboratory for innovation and commercialization of technologies. It is a community that is very well linked, both socially. Social networks are the gateway to wealth creation, actually. And that is very, very important, actually, as I do my job with BioVentures. Just a little bit about what I do at UAMS. Okay, good. At BioVentures, we are the technology licensing arm of UAMS. So smart guys at UAMS invent things. They invent them in the laboratory, they invent them in clinical studies, they invent them in a variety of ways, but those technologies, those inventions never see the light of day unless they're commercialized for the public good. So part of the mission of UAMS is to make sure that when we see an important discovery being made, that we quickly patent that technology, and then it's my job to make sure that we patent that technology and see that it's properly delivered for better health care. Otherwise, if it were not protected through patents, the private sector would never pick it up and never commercialize it. So in addition to what I would call traditional technology transfer functions, UAMS BioVentures has a life science incubator that sits at the corner of 4th Street and Cedar. And in that, we actually license technologies for commercialization to startup companies that may emerge from entrepreneurial activities here in Little Rock. And through that process, we create companies. So over the course of the last 12 years, BioVentures has generated about 44 companies. We have, at this point, 12 operating companies that are scattered about the city of Little Rock and North Little Rock. And those generate about almost 550 jobs. That generate about $26 million for the region in terms of wages for employees of those companies. So that is sort of a mini snapshot of what we do. It is about capturing the value of the research that flows from the university to make sure that technologies are properly commercialized so that your tax dollars that are paying sort of federal research to the universities are properly delivered back to you in terms of better health care. So that's a little bit about the job that I do at UAMS. I am delighted to be here tonight and to be with all of you and a chance to share some additional information about UAMS BioVentures and the mission that we have to deliver better health care to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so you guys have heard from everybody up here. As you can see, we've got a really great, diverse panel talking about different arms of technology. Speakers, we got a lot of people in here, so just be sure you keep that microphone up there, and I'll remind you to repeat those questions when you get them from the audience. But the rest of the night is up to you guys. So does anybody have any questions to start us off? Yes?
For the gentleman from the airport, do planes really have autopilot, and how auto is that autopilot?
Yes, planes do have autopilots, and depends on the airplane and the actual autopilot that's installed. Some of them will actually take off, fly the route, and land for you if you don't interrupt it at all.
Question next to him?
Mr. Dietrich first, when y'all get that app below the washing machine, I'll buy it. And I have a question.
Mike Douglas on the end.
Mr. Douglas, how well does computer modeling actually predict the interaction of chemical research? Is it accurate enough that you can just draw it on the computer and then you can actually predict what's going to happen in the reaction?
The question is, can computer modeling actually predict what may happen in the test tube? I think that was more or less the gist of your question. The answer to that is that the modeling has actually become so good that there is a sort of a new area of technology called in silico type of technology, where essentially you're modeling things in silico to hopefully represent what you're going to see in the test tube or in vivo. It all depends on the quality and the extent of the databases that you're using to do that. But there is a lot of time that's taken out of the drug development process through the use of these in silico modeling technologies. So.
Yes.
Mr. Dietrich, you were a self-professed gamer by the age of 3, I believe. What were your favorite video games at the time?
So the question was, what were my favorite games when I was a kid? When I was that young, it was mainly Gorf and Space Invaders. I don't know if anybody remembers Gorf. It was kind of like a Space Invaders knockoff for the Commodore and early Ataris, but it had a little bit of a different storyline and different graphics, but it was still a really fun game. And of course, Space Invaders, you can't go wrong with that. So.
What about now?
Now, the one I'm really waiting for to come out is Mass Effect 3. That will be the game. I've already pre-ordered it on both the PC and on the Xbox. So I'm really interested in seeing how that works with the Kinect. Because they've promised that there'll be some really cool Kinect features with that. So.
Question? Yes.
Kind of following up on computer modeling, have any of your panelists heard of the Blue Crush? This is a computer modeling system that the police department in Memphis, Tennessee is using to predict where the next crimes will occur. And they're claiming great success with it. It's 30–40% drop in property crimes.
My only comment to that is there's a...
Will you repeat the question?
Basically, there's something called Blue Crush that actually has, at least with the appropriate information in it, the opportunity to predict where crimes are going to occur and who's going to commit these crimes. And the only sort of comment that I can make to that is there's a wonderful show on TV in this season. It's called Person of Interest that actually sort of picks up on that very question. But I don't have any additional information to talk about Blue Crush or who invented it. It sounds like sort of an IBM-er thing to me. So.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, I was picked on and asked you to ask you this. A little bit of a joke. I started taking flying lessons 2 months ago. I'm assuming if your instructor tells you make aircraft carrier landings, that's bad.
Can you say that again?
I said I started taking flying lessons 2 months ago, and her and I were joking about it. I'm guessing if your instructor tells you you're making aircraft carrier landings, that's bad.
Unless you're, well, the question is, he started taking flying lessons 2 months ago, and he guesses that when the instructor tells you you're making aircraft landings, that is bad. Unless you're a Southwest pilot, that's true.
Ryanair was a bad one.
Any other questions? Yes.
What's the most exciting thing that's come through your office in the last couple of years?
The question is, what is the most exciting thing to come through the office in the last couple of years? Again, just to sort of reiterate, my job is to help others at UAMS spot discoveries that come out of the university that can be used to improve the health of man. Personal medicine is a very big initiative right now. It brings together the best of discovery with the opportunities to use the power of the internet and sort of the resources of programmers to blend scientific observations with medical intervention. UAMS is the center of multiple myeloma, and multiple myeloma is a huge resource and center of opportunity for UAMS in the world. People fly over international and state borders to come here to be treated at our Multiple Myeloma Institute because it basically has turned cancer from a death sentence into a chronic disease, and that is a huge jump, and it does that through personalized medicine. So the opportunity to actually sort of survey how your body is reacting to the disease through what we call gene expression array, and the opportunity to medically intervene in that process for the best outcome for that patient and control that disease is what we call true personalized medicine. So it is the gateway to personalized medicine, which quite frankly UAMS leads the world in through its Multiple Myeloma Institute. We have patented technologies that basically capture the value of that for mankind, and we have formed companies that are bringing those medical diagnostics for use not only to the UAMS Winthrop Rockefeller Institute here of cancer, but cancer institutes all over the world. We receive samples now from Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson, the Hutch in Seattle, any big cancer center in the world, Mayo, that's doing leading edge cancer research. We are the gateway. We are the reference laboratory for this form of personalized medicine.
Yes, I'll get Anna and then I'll get you, David. Anna, you go.
Okay. One of the biggest developments recently is nanotechnology. And both UAMS and ULR is leading in certain area of nanotechnology. Can you tell us what nanotechnology is, how we can apply it, and what we can expect from this?
Okay, this is where the real techno-nerd part of me starts coming out here. The question is nanotechnology. What is it? What does it mean to this community here in Little Rock and Central Arkansas? Nanotechnology is the use of very, very small materials, new nanomaterials that can be used to attach a variety of medicines, small detection devices, you name it, things that you can actually put in the body of a human individual and basically treat disease and also report the ongoing progress of that treatment or the progress of the disease. Where this region, I think, is in a very, very interesting position is that south of us here in Jefferson County is the National Toxicological Research Center, NCTR. And this particular institute has for many years worked as part of the FDA to report the toxicology of various drugs. But now it's focused on nanomaterials, and it's the only place in the world that really focuses on the toxicology of nanomaterials and how those nanomaterials are going to be used in man. So if you couple what we have as a resource that is essentially a federal laboratory that operates in our region with the power of the nanomaterials engineering that is coming out of UCLR, and the nanomedicine applications that are from UAMS, and the collaborations that occur between those two. We had last year the commissioner of the FDA, Margaret Hamburg, here to actually pull together all of those elements in our region to say, you guys are truly unique and we're in a position to really push the use of nanomaterials in man forward. And that is basically something that I believe is going to put this region of the country on the map, on par with any research enterprise that's currently using new methodologies to treat man. These nanomaterials are marvelous resources. What is their toxicology? How do they behave in man? And we are in a position not only to address the applications but also the toxicology.
David, what was your question?
Yeah, this is a question for Mike. In fairness, I should introduce myself. I'm Dave Miller. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at UAMS. What is what's some of the criteria, Mike, you look at to determine whether something's commercially viable for moving forward, and sort of at what point in the development cycle of technology is typically like getting involved?
Okay.
So the question coming from the back part of the room here is, at what stage do we engage sort of technologies that are coming out of the institution, and what sort of criteria do we place on those technologies to basically enter a commercialization program? As we start down that path, patenting these technologies is not cheap. We have a budget in which we spend judiciously on the patenting of those technologies and begin taking those forward. What we do as a way of entering into whether this is worthwhile for us to patent or not, there's a lot of art to it because it's all very early stage technology, but what we're doing is basically looking at, one, what is the market for a given technology? So if we've had an invention out of the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences for the cure for death, well, there's a big market out there for the cure for death. So are there any competing technologies? So we look at what the market size is. We look at what the features and benefits of our given technology are relative to that which is currently in the market, what the size of that market is, and that gives us at least a snapshot to determine if we're going to invest patent dollars in moving that forward. And then we work with our investigators and with all of our marketing resources, and I will say that UALR and the ASB TDC is a terrific resource for us as we market our technologies to the rest of the world.
I have a question from the back of the room. I'm not sure who it's for, so we're going to assume it's for all of you. If it doesn't apply to you, then you can just pass it on. It is said that you learn more from failure than you do success. What was your greatest technology failure, and what did you learn from it? Who would like to talk about their failures?
I've been talking a lot.
Anybody?
Just a very quick one, actually. I started a company in St. Louis called Novactyl, one that you referred to, and we took this to a clinical stage company. But we almost lost this company because we had an inventor who had a very difficult time turning loose of his technology to allow that to be properly commercialized. The sensitivity that we have to address when we deal with technologies coming out of the university is our investigators spend their entire life sort of working on some aspect of this technology, and it's very, very difficult for them to sort of give up their baby for us to take over in a commercialization sense. So we almost lost that company. It was close to a mess there, but we got through it.
Anybody else? No?
No,
Y'all are all successful at everything you do. I'm very honored to be in your presence.
I had one recently. I've got an old airplane that's got the old steam gauges in it and everything. And I've got a friend that he's 80 years old. He's got a Mooney that he's owned since '82, and a Mooney, it's a type airplane. So very fast. Everybody wants it. Okay. Anyway, he has outfitted this airplane with all the new stuff. Yeah, and autopilot, but all the new stuff that you can buy for a small airplane. He has a glass panel that rivals, well, actually he's got more instruments in there than some of the commercial airliners. And he asked me if I wanted to fly left seat, and I said, sure. So I sat down in the left seat, and I was lost starting out. That's the pilot seat, okay? So my wife's up here coaching me. She was in the back seat, so she saw it all happening. So not being used to his instruments, having the computerized instruments and everything, he told me, okay, put this frequency in the #1 comm. And I went to reach where I thought I was supposed to go, and he slapped my hand. He goes, not there. And I'm like, okay, where? And he showed me. So every time he asked me to do something, he kept slapping my hand. No, wrong one. And I said, okay. So I learned that I don't really need an airplane that's got all that new high-tech stuff, because I probably won't be able to fly it.
What about you, Dietrich? You've had several, you've had companies and businesses, so surely you've encountered some things that don't work or you've learned from along the way.
Well, I guess the one thing I could say would be, don't always believe the reviews. I went out and invested quite a bit of money on some technology stuff for a computer a few years back, and it just really wasn't worth the effort, but it was based on all the good information, so I thought, but didn't turn out to be. Yeah.
Yes.
For the airport, they always warn you about turning your instruments off, your cell phones, your whatever, all that when they take off. What does that actually potentially do or could do, and are there advances into that where they're going to get rid of that?
Okay, the question is, they have you turn off all your cell phones and electronic gizmos, and what will they actually do if you don't turn them off? I have no idea.
Aren't they going towards not having to do that?
Well, there's the old FAA and the old FCC that I think has a hard time grasping some of the new technology and the shielding of the electronic instruments. I mean, how could you be sitting back by the lab and be affecting the flight instruments up front? I don't know.
Well, I discovered my cell phone was on one time all the way through the flight. It didn't ground.
Yeah.
So.
Did you have any battery power left though? Because a lot of times what will happen is if you leave your cell phone on, it'll be searching, especially after you get above 6,000 feet, it'll be trying to find a tower. And there's been times that I've left mine on in my airplane and get there and my phone's dead. So.
Question there, yes. Yes.
Mr. Jones, is the Little Rock Airport going to expand its footprint, evicting more residents from Ward 1, forcing the redistricting of Ward 1 further west?
Okay, the question is the airport going to expand by buying more neighborhoods and evicting people from Ward 1? There are no plans for any more property acquisitions. The last acquisitions were completed almost 2 years ago, and we're finalizing some of the paperwork now, so there should not be any other property acquisitions in the near future.
Yes.
If Conway is the airport that they're wanting, how will that, do you have any idea as to how that might impact Little Rock Airport?
If Conway gets the airport that they're predicted to get, I don't think that'll impact Little Rock Airport any. I think what it would do, though, is it'll help the businesses in Conway. You've got a lot of businesses that are coming up, and some of them do have their own business jets, and so that would give them the ability to actually have their airplanes at Conway and, you know, not have them at North Little Rock or Russellville or Saline County or even Little Rock, you know, National Airport.
Yes.
Well, first, I am a living person who UAMS operated on me just a few weeks ago.
Way to go.
That's not my question. I want to testify and say it's the most wonderful place I've ever seen.
Hear, hear.
I have. Melanoma stage 4, okay? And they think it's completely, I can show you the scar. I've recovered. Now, my question is, I'm on a steep learning curve, okay, because of this. Is it true that, or is this an accepted fact, or is it just a kind of a theory, that all of us have cancer cells in us, different cancer cells, and in most people, they never appear as tumors or cancer? That seems to be, I've heard this from and read it in Scientific American and some others, that all of us have these cancer cells that just never mature or never come in.
You guys want to take this one? No, I'll answer your question. And there are some people that are much more qualified than I to answer this. But the question is, are there cancer cells that are essentially dormant in your body for all of us, and that in some cases they get activated and you develop cancer? The answer is that there are, in fact, cancer genes present in all of us. They're called oncogenes. And they're genes that, when they are activated, will trigger a cascade of events which leads to cancer. And you know, there's a lot of information known about what triggers those oncogenes to initiate a proliferative disease, a cancer. How we sort of can intervene in that is the subject of massive amounts of research right now. But the real answer to your question is yes, there are those oncogenes that lay in wait, and a lot of it is our genetics. It's probably in part triggered by what we eat, what we smoke or don't smoke, and a variety of other things that can sort of promote cancer. But they're there. They're there in all of us. We all have the same genomes, with sort of a few exceptions.
There's a question over here. Yes, sir. Yes.
In the last 10 years, there's been tremendous amount of change in technology regarding computers, you know, Apple, what they've done, things like that in terms of technology. If you were going to project the next 5 years, what do you be seeing?
So the question was, if I were to project the next 5 years of technology, what would we see? I would see more things trend towards mobile. More things go towards connected devices like the washer and dryer. You know, you're already starting to see it now. You have Samsung actually introduced something at the CES show. It's called Smart Glass, where basically, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Minority Report, and he's just kind of swiping his hand over a piece of glass. That was introduced at CES this year. So it is coming. More of your things like your car, your washer and dryer, your refrigerator, everything in your house and everything in your office will start becoming more connected to each other. So if you walk in the door, you know, of your house, you might have a little app on your phone that says set the temperature when I'm 20 feet away to 70 degrees. That way it brings it down as you're walking in. Just things like that will be a lot more integrated than it is now.
I think from a medical health perspective, I think you're going to find that a lot of your surveillance of your own personal health is going to be placed much more in the hands of computers, devices, mobile devices, a variety of things that will allow you much greater access to the management of your health. I'm talking about everything from CT scans to nutrition. So it's I think you're going to see a lot of that coming at us here in the next 5 years.
Charles, do you want to? What do you think is coming down the road in terms of aeronautic technology?
How do you feel about flying in the back of an airplane with no pilot?
No.
In fact, they may be sitting back here in this office or something, you know, while you're buzzing around 42,000 feet.
That's really that few years down the road, maybe?
Could be.
Interesting. He asked if we needed tickets for that. Yes, question right here.
About this new technology, the things that are coming in the future, do you see any of that leading to a greater manufacturing capability in America? Is it going to lead to, or are we just going to make these new products in China?
I hate to say it. My guess would probably be where...
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. The question was, with all this new technology coming down, will the manufacturing in America, or will this be manufactured in America, or rather in China or Japan or somewhere else? And I would say that most of it will continue to be manufactured overseas, just because of the cost involved. I really do hate to say it, because I wish it would all come back here, because keep the jobs here. But on that note, I think that the innovation will start here. The thoughts of the new technology, the way it's developed, will start here, and then the actual production of it will be overseas, where they get shipped back here. So,
I would just add a footnote that I think skilled workforces are going to be very important down the road, and I don't know what that means, but I think the opportunity to generate a skilled workforce to address the manufacture and sort of modification, if you will, of technologies that are going to be part of our life down the road is going to be very, very important. I can't help but feel, I'm the sort of glass half full kind of guy, that a lot of that is going to sort of be here at some point down the road.
Yes.
As a C-130 pilot, I want to say that robots are the biggest threat to coastal aircraft overseas right now, but I was wondering if you could speak to the increases in autopilot technology like Cat 2 ILSs and the increased precision on the runways. Is that causing more maintenance to be required in touchdown zones? Is that a question of issue? I know that they had to make it less accurate in order to not tear up the runways.
The question was, I'm sorry, the accuracy of the Cat 2 and Cat 3 approaches. For those of you who don't know what a Cat 2 or Cat 3 approach is, it is a precision approach that allows you to come down to a lower level before you have to see the field. A Cat 3 approach actually lets you come all the way down with 0-0 visibility. If the aircraft is equipped and the pilot is certified and current. Is that correct? You're probably more familiar with that because I don't do Cat 3 approaches. You know, interesting, the one thing that's happening in the United States is, you know, the FAA is getting away as much as possible from the ground-based nav aids, and Little Rock right now is one of the closest Cat 3 airports to Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas. We've got them coming from Wichita, Oklahoma City, down in the eastern part of Texas, Louisiana, just so that they can fly Cat 3 approaches because they can't get them in their state. So, you know, it seems like with the GPS technology, the FAA is trying to get further and further away from the ground-based technology. And, you know, with the wide area augmentation systems and local area augmentation systems that utilize some ground-based augmentation, most of it is satellite-based, and to tell you the truth, I'm kind of scared of what the future brings because, you know, the military controls the GPS system with the satellites and everything, but what a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, we're having a lot more solar storms right now and a lot more sunspots and everything, and every time you have a significant sunspot, it does affect the GPS signals. So, you know, the FAA is wanting to go to this next gen, which you may have heard about, and basically what that is it relies more on the satellites to do your navigation. It allows you to have closer separation. So imagine flying across the ocean and you're 1 mile behind the airplane in front of you, and you're only 1,000 feet up above the opposing traffic coming the other direction. Because that's what they're trying to get to, is where they can put more airplanes in a smaller amount of space. But you know, even right now, they have problems, and part of it's due to the military, and some of it is due to the solar activity. But you'll find daily that there are areas of the United States that have GPS outages, and a lot of that is due to the solar storms. Now, if you're flying over New Mexico, it's mainly due to the military, because you know all the proving grounds they've got down there. So, like I said, you probably know a lot more on some of that stuff than I do, but you know.
Now, was part of your question about the runway impact?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
So the rumor that we hear a lot is that they designed these systems to be so accurate that they were putting holes in the runway from hitting the same exact point every time, and they had to randomize it to lessen impact. Are you seeing more wear and tear specifically?
Okay, the question is the Cat 3 approaches having more wear and tear because they're touching down in the same spot? Actually, we do not see enough Cat 3 approaches at our airport here to even, you know, have an effect on the runway. What we see on our runways is more the effect of just landings, period, because the runways are grooved so that it carries the water away and you have contact with dry pavement. And over the years, you know, the runways that we've got right now, most of them are probably 30 plus years old. And the grooves are starting to diminish. So, you know, we're looking at projects where we can actually go in and saw cut the grooves to make the grooves deeper, so that it'll carry the water and the ice and slush away a lot better.
You have a question?
Yeah, for Mr. Douglas. I was just wondering, how, like, when they're doing research and whatnot, how long does it take from, like, inception of an idea to where it becomes mass produced, like, for the public? I mean, I know that probably is going to vary widely, but just kind of a ballpark.
The question is, how long does it take from bench to bedside, basically? This whole sort of translation of technology through the regulatory and developmental process to a point where it's commercially available. That depends on the technology. If it's a diagnostic, it may take, you know, if you're lucky, 6 years, 5-6 years. There are what we call point-of-care diagnostics, dipsticks, that you can check for, let's say, pregnancy or things of that sort, where you're just dipping the stick into some sort of body fluid. Those are probably about the same time, about 3 years. If you're talking about what we're really good at UAMS, and that's vaccine development, you're talking about probably 10 years before you actually see this sort of coming off the bench to a point where it's moved through a very, very expensive series of clinical trials and different phases of FDA regulatory clearance before it becomes a product. So very long and very expensive for the bulk of the technologies we see coming out of here.
Yes.
The question is that things do manage to work their way through the regulatory. The question is, things get approved more quickly in Europe and are adopted more quickly in Europe than they are here. And is there a chance that we might be able to see some sort of expedited regulatory clearance here, or basically to be in a position where we could accept certain cleared drugs from Europe? I don't really have a good answer for you on that. I wish I did, but it is very clear that the regulatory process in Europe is more efficient for reasons that I don't know. We could probably speculate on that, but the FDA does definitely struggle under the weight of probably limited resources and and a variety of other things. But
What about getting drugs from cannabis? Because people are starting to see what their drugs are so expensive.
the question is, what about getting drugs from across the border, from Canada, Mexico, because we can't get them here? I don't know that I can really tell you anything about that. That's one of those I'd probably just stay away from right now. There are probably many of you in the room here that are much more versed at that than I just haven't looked at it. Sorry. They are expensive.
So I want to ask Dietrich to go over one thing that we talked about on the radio show, which in short was Apple versus Google. So one nice thing that he did is he sort of explained the niche of each and where each excels and you know, versus the other. So I think it'd be nice to sort of have a rundown of what everything does and how it all fits together and that sort of thing. And your personal opinion.
Okay, let me preface by saying I'm an Android fan. So, having said that, I think Apple is really good at, thank you. I think Apple is really good at marketing and coming up with designs and styles and functionality that most other companies cannot match. Google, for all its might and all its worth, just cannot come up with that nice UI that Apple, iPhone, Macintosh, they all have. Having said that, they also are very keen on controlling or saying what you can and cannot do on your device. In other words, without Apple's approval, you can't install an app on your phone or your device. And let's say you install an app and then 3 weeks later somebody decides it's not a good app, Apple can yank that app right back off your phone without you saying yes or no. Android and Google, on the other hand, is very open. It's very good for customization. A lot of the geeks like it. You can hack it, you can tear it apart, you can make it your own. Both my Android devices I have rooted, or jailbroken if you want to go iPhone technology there, or speak. You know, and I do it for various reasons. One, I don't like advertisements on my websites, but you know, it gives me a lot more control, you know, of my phone and my tablet. But all in all, I think that they are both very good companies in their own respects. Google is very good at the technical side. Most of their devices, Android in general, can do a lot more than the iPhone can in general, if you have a device that can support it. That's one of the other issues with Android versus the iPhone. The iPhone's one device that the developers can make one set of instructions for and it will work. iPhones, or Androids, you have Samsung, you have LG, you have 50 different companies making Android devices of all different sizes, so you do have a lot more fragmentation. So, I mean, it really kind of depends on what you're looking for in your technology. If you like the sleek form, just let it work out of the box. By all means, go with an iPhone. My mother, I bought her an Android phone not too long ago, and I'm really regretting it now. I wish I'd have gotten an iPhone. And for me, that says a lot. Now, having said that, you know, I mean, most people, if they ask me if I should buy an iPhone or an Android, I would say an Android, just because I like it a lot better. So.
What about on the web? And the different software, different kind of programs and niches they have there?
Well, Google has a lot of, how to say it? A lot of the Google stuff is meant for cloud usage. I know Apple's starting to go that way now, but all of Google's stuff is online and it works on all your devices. So your Gmail will work on an iPhone, your Gmail will work on an Android, your Gmail will work on your desktop, it'll work on your TV now. Google has photo sharing now, kind of like Instagram does with Picasa. So there's quite a few various apps on both sides of the aisle that do the same thing, and it's just, again, a matter of preference on the way you want it to look and the way you want it to feel, and the amount of customization and control that you really want.
Thank you.
Can you
Yes.
differentiate Android and the other system? What
The iPhone?
makes them different?
They're completely, it's like Windows versus Macintosh back on the desktops. Apple was Macintosh, Apple's iPhone. Android would be kind of like your old Windows or your old Linux box. But they are both, at their core, they are both Unix-based devices. So if you, from a techno standpoint, they're essentially the same underneath. They just have different skins. From from a user's perspective, I would say that the things that keep them apart are, again, the ease of use and the design. Most of the apps you have on iPhone you can find on Android and vice versa.
Is Apple just being more protective?
Apple's more protective, they're more selective of what they allow on their device. Again, because they're not fragmented, they are in their own little walled garden, they kind of have that luxury of having that control. Whereas Android, I might make an app for a Samsung phone that in theory should work on all Androids, but it very well may not, because the phone I tested it on is larger than the smaller ones. Now, in later versions of Android 4, which just came out, I think, last month, that's largely been rectified, and they've kind of bringing everything into one shell. But for general arguments, you can say one's more customizable and more Windows-like, and one's more Macintosh-like.
Question back there, yes, sir.
There's a lot of major applications that are now free to download. How do developers make money or make a living writing free software?
So the question was, if there's all these applications out on the markets and the app stores that are free, how do the developers make their money? A lot of them that are free are part of websites that require registration if you want the advanced features. A lot of them have ads that are built into them. A lot of them are supported by just the revenues of the company. A lot of your travel apps and such, they get a kickback essentially from the airlines when you book something through them. So I mean, there's all sorts of different revenue models for your apps. I've seen them come through that are all like I said, advertisement driven. I've seen some that just want it to be free to get their name out there. There's a lot of those little check out our free iPhone app. Kind of brings that that name to them. So.
Yes, ma'am. Can you repeat it? We couldn't hear it up here.
What's the most popular programming language?
What's the most popular programming language? Yes? For Android.
Android, it's all developed in Java. It is one big Java engine, essentially. Apple, the iPhone, I want to say, is done in Objective-C. So you have to learn one or the other if you want to develop for one of the. There's no cross. No, Microsoft has its own device. It's called Windows Phone. It has maybe like a 2.5 to 3% market share right now. But if Microsoft has their way, they're going to push that up into the teens and the 20s. Hope maybe this year, maybe next year. But Android is owned by Google. Oh, it is. I want to say it was 53%. I want to say it. I saw something recently about it. I'd have to double check it. If you'd like
in terms of market share overall?
Right, right. If you'd like, you can leave me your email address, and I'll be more than happy to, reply to you with that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, as far as commercial air flights, do you think we'll ever see supersonic travel in the next 20, 30 years before I die, kind of thing?
I really don't think so, and the reason is
Will you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting about this area over here. He asked if I thought that we would see supersonic travel come back in the next few years. And I really don't think that we'll ever see supersonic travel, and a lot of that is because of the dollars. It costs too much, and people aren't willing to pay a high enough price to have that supersonic travel and to have the convenience of scheduled flights every day or twice a day or whatever from, one city pair to the other.
Proprietary manufacturing has been a big thing with me for a long time. In say UAMS or at the airport or in your businesses, different businesses, do you have one model that you use, and if you did have one model that you use, would it facilitate better interaction between pilots all over the FAA or something? So if you use, in other words, have one type of tablet device, or do you think they could make that a standard thing that would cross lines so that different airports could use the different devices and still communicate with each other, or different labs, that sort of thing, to facilitate better communication between different units.
The question is, I think the question is proprietary manufacturing and how that can be used to facilitate more efficient either product development across various medical disciplines, or if you're in the airport business or aviation industry, opportunities to sort of cross-feed disciplines there. I'd say from the medical side, proprietary manufacturing is certainly something that manufacturers want to get into with various technologies, be it the manufacturing of a device or let's say a medical device for surgical instruments, for example. There are lots of companies out there that we interface with that are in the business of, one, capturing the value of that technology that's available through patents, and then doing the manufacturing as well as the distribution, marketing and distribution of that product. So it's sort of a one-stop shop for taking that medical technology from discovery, from the surgeon's hands, through the patent process, all the way through manufacturing. That's sort of a common theme that you'll see certainly in the device and the diagnostics business. And there are a lot of young companies out there that are placing themselves in that manufacturing sector right now to more efficiently deliver these devices and diagnostic devices to the market. That's one of the things we look for here in Little Rock that we're lacking. We don't have the infrastructure that really supports that proprietary manufacturing that we need.
Well, I guess part of my question was, do you think that that's a hindrance to advancement?
It is very definitely a hindrance to advancement. It's one of those needs that we have here that if it's not met is going to go elsewhere somehow and maybe overseas. But workforce development, there's a lot of education and that's needed for developing that workforce that can take these newer technologies and drive them through to commercialization. That's one area where there's a lot of work to be done here in Arkansas.
A couple of questions at the bar, yes.
Again from Mr. Jones. As I said, I just started taking flying lessons 2 months ago. My grandfather flew, my dad flew in the 50s and 60s. And they were not wealthy people in those days. And as I meet people, I hear the complaint over and over that as inflation comes up, and kind of middle class income goes down, general aviation will die. Will it die?
Okay, basically the question is, will general aviation die? I don't think so. I think you're always going to have the enthusiasts that'll find a way to fund their habit. So, instead of doing drugs, we do flight, okay? It's the best way to get high. Best way to get high. A lot of people have misconceptions. They think that, you got to be rich to fly, you've got to be rich to own an airplane, and you don't. It just depends on what you're wanting. If you're able to buy a brand new airplane that costs $600,000, yeah, you're probably rich. But you can pick up airplanes. A lot of people don't realize this, but you can pick up a two-seat airplane on the used market right now for $15,000, and you can fly at 90 miles an hour. So, it's not out of touch. Some people, they'll have partners, and so if you've got $15,000 or $20,000 that you can spend, if you get two partners, then you can get into a $60,000 airplane. The thing is, you've got to look at what your mission is, you got to look at what your pocketbook is, and what you can afford. Of course, everybody wants something that's a little bit better than what they've got, and you just have to, have your parameters set and realize that you need to stay within your pocketbook.
Yes.
Thank you. This is also a question for Mr. Jones. If I'm not mistaken, there were 0 fatalities in commercial aviation last year. I think I read that.
I think I read that too. His statement was there were 0 fatalities in aviation last year.
And that's great. And I wanted to ask you, as someone who's followed this, your career, like, it seems like aviation's getting safer. It seems like when I was growing up, there was a couple crashes every year. Now they're extremely rare, and I wanted to know, is that what do you attribute to what seems to be becoming safer of flying?
Okay, he's wondering what seems to be making aviation safer than what it used to be 15, 20, 30 years ago. I think it's a combination of things. I think one thing is the manufacturing business. I think they're putting out a lot better product. The other thing is, I think the inspection process, they now know what to look for, especially with the metallurgy studies and everything. They know where the vibrations are going to, cause some harmonic cracking and things like that. But all in all, I think one of the biggest things is the human factors. They've done a lot of human factor studies, and those human factor studies have not only changed the way the instrument panels are laid out and the size of the knobs and all that, but the human factors also goes into the communication between the pilot and the co-pilot or the other crew members of that aircraft, and I believe that is probably the biggest thing that has helped aviation safety.
Yes.
Yeah, question for Mr. Jones as well. Number one, thank you for finally getting an operational scanner at the airport, so guys like me that have knee replacements don't get molested every time we go. But how much of aviation security, whether it's the courier you're responsible for, or the TSA folks, how much is it still technology-based versus just old-fashioned human intuition, interaction, observation?
Okay, the question is, as far as airport security, how much is technology-based versus how much is human-based? Technology doesn't work unless you have humans behind it. And you can have all the latest technology and the bells and whistles, but if you don't have somebody there knowing what to do whenever that bell goes off, then you've just got a bell going off. I can't really expound any on what some of our safety measures and security measures are out at the airport, because that's security information I can't share. However, what you're seeing more in the airport industry is in the last 5 years, they're going more to biometrics to go through doors. Some airports are even looking at iris scans and the different new technology that's coming up. Iris scans are relatively old now, but they're looking at some of the new technology on how to not only allow people through the door, but also how to track them once they get through the door.
Yes.
Mr. Douglas, from a VC standpoint, I have two questions. One, there was a recent Supreme Court discussions about how medical studies and statistical correlations can be actionable. And if a doctor uses statistical correlations and be charged a license that knowledge in the medical system, how does that affect your business? And what do you feel about that? Secondly, the other question was, with federally funded money that goes to research, taxpayer-funded research, how do you feel about that staying in the private sector rather than being in public domain from where it was first funded?
Let me take your second point first. The second point was federal dollars, your tax dollars, which are coming to UAMS or to other medical research facilities to support research, are basically the financial resources that are used to generate these patents that we're talking about, that basically are then developed through the private sector, through pharma, through private equity investment, you name it. Basically, we as an institution that receives federal funding, UAMS, we are obligated via an act that was passed in 1980 called the Bayh-Dole Act to do two things. We're obligated to report, we're obligated to first capture any invention that we can get our hands on that we feel has value for the public good. that is generated from these federal dollars. And we have an obligation to try and see those discoveries commercialized. So basically, in the end, what we want to be able to do is say that your tax dollars were being used in the best way that we know how to deliver better health care for you. So that process involves basically capturing that asset, that intellectual asset that we can then use, or that the private sector can use to invest money in and drive the very expensive clinical trials that are necessary to see that drug or that that therapeutic or whatever it's going to be properly developed and delivered to you, the public. So that's the sort of the commercialization path. It involves federal dollars, your tax dollars, which are feeding an engine that essentially gets turned into these therapeutics that can be used for you. Your first question, I think, involved some of the more recent sort of cases that have come down that address the opportunity to truly capture intellectual property, intellectual value of discovery, and make sure that those are properly being used by the medical community. And there are some things that are currently in flux right now. I can't give you all the details for that, but I think basically in the end, the patient is protected through a variety of mechanisms in this process. And although I can't give you all the details, there are a number of things that actually work to a certain extent in the university's favor, as we are people who tend to file very early following a discovery before it gets published by the investigators in the institution. Sort of saying a lot of different things here, but basically in the end, your tax dollars are being properly translated for the development and delivery of better health care.
Yes.
Will piracy laws ever really squish file sharing? And is file sharing really any different than burning a CD or burning a copy of a cassette for your friends?
The question was, will laws ever stop piracy, and is piracy any different than just copying files to like a mixtape, essentially, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Tapes for friends.
Right.
You could touch on SOPA.
Okay.
You can touch on it.
Right. Well, SOPA.
We covered it in a minute on the radio.
Right, yeah,
we were good.
All three of them, too. I'll get into that in just a second. To answer your question, will the laws ever work? Probably not. They can make a law they want to make, and all it takes is somebody shutting down their website, changing domains, changing IP addresses, and boom, they're right back up. You know, if they go to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. or doesn't recognize our laws, what can we do? You can block it from the U.S. from actually going there, but set up a proxy to China, and you can go after there. So there are always ways around it. Now, the second part of that was, is it any different to, like, copying a mixtape? Yes and no. I'm not going to get into the legality of it because it's kind of a matter of opinion. To me personally, I think as long as I'm not sharing it with anybody else, you know, if I download a song and I listen to it and I go out and buy the CD or whatever, that's perfectly fine. So I'm essentially previewing it before I buy it. There's a lot of people who would disagree with that. So, you know, but that's my opinion on that part. To touch in on SOPA, PIPA, and I forget what the third one is, the international version of that. SOPA and PIPA were two laws that were designed to basically squash piracy and allow the government and the entertainment agency or companies to say, you know, like for instance, Google links to a website that has pirated torn on it. They could shut Google down for that particular page down for that very, you know, just for linking to it. Very, very bad ideas for a whole myriad of reasons. And luckily they haven't gone anywhere, and they don't look like they will anytime soon. The third one, I forget what the acronym is for it, but it's basically the international version of SOPA and PIPA for everybody but the US. And so it kind of requires SOPA to be in effect for that one to really take effect as well, I think. I mean, I haven't really looked into it all that much yet, because I just kind of heard about that third one, I guess, this morning, actually. But from what I can tell, it seems like it's the international version of SOPA. And if ours doesn't work, then that one obviously can't, because there'd be no, you know, everybody else and then us type thing. So.
Yes.
I have a question about I know at UAMS we're getting ready to roll over into a newer format. We've had one that seems like it's been there for maybe a long time, but and a lot of people would really like to see it. But you know, you see some websites that are just so cool and they have all these bells and whistles and stuff. What do you think is going to be the newest thing that'll be the cool thing? You know, I mean, it used to be like we saw pictures rotate, we thought that was really cool. And now, you know, people can inset YouTube where they can do this little square that you can, that's the coolest thing. But are there other things that we can start to kind of look towards that might make things easier to look at or just maybe a wow factor?
A lot of it, the question is there any design elements that are kind of coming into play, I think, into that, you know, to make things look better and more stylish? I haven't really seen anything like really groundbreaking. You know, you have the whole jQuery model, which is just a JavaScript library or a set of code to make things kind of whistle and flash a little bit nicer. You'll notice that Flash is starting to diminish in its popularity as jQuery does pick up and HTML5 comes out. I would also say that most of what you're going to start seeing is all of the stuff that you like to see on your desktop versions of websites start hitting your mobiles. So right now you'll go to a mobile site and largely it's text with maybe a few pictures. In the next 2-3 years maybe, it's going to start getting a lot more interactive. I've seen a lot of things coming up with the location services where I can just say, hey, I'm here, what's near me? You know, design-wise, you'll start seeing things like shadow boxes and what do they call, light boxes popping up on top of your pages like you would on the websites, so you don't have to go back and forward through a bunch of different website or pages on the website. So it's going to get a little bit easier to see that way. You'll start seeing a lot more responsive design, so you can write it for once, you know, write the website once, and then it works on every device, regardless of how big. So that's starting to come out too. So
this is a follow-up, very elementary question. But I'm not a technical person. I'm not a design person, very sadly. But I know when I look at a website and I'm like, wow, that's great, that works, it's wonderful. And then I look at another website and I just feel like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. So what makes a good website?
Really, it has to do with a lot of it is layout, a lot of it is planning. You know, some people will just rush in and build a website from the ground up and, you know, it's up. Other people will spend a lot of time and money researching the website, going through, you know, to focus groups and saying, hey, what works for you? Where do you like this to be? You know, how do you want, you know, what is the easiest way for you, the user, to use this interface? And those companies that spend that money on that research and that time learning how they want their site, you know, calling people like me and going through the consultant, you know, bit, saying, you know, what are you wanting to try to do with your website? What are you know, what are your goals, who your audience is, stuff like that. And really ironing that out before you start production really can make quite a bit of a difference.
Yes?
To follow that up, 3D you didn't mention as a possibility for websites and so forth in the future, but is 3D a flash in the pan? Because we've got about 10 different formats from everybody's manufacturer. You have to have their glasses, and somebody supposedly came out with one where you don't need glasses. So is it in the future, and is it going to work on all that?
Is it in the future?
3D technology.
3D technology, yeah. Maybe. Me personally, I don't like going to 3D movies because I don't want to have glasses on my head for 2.5 hours getting a headache at the tech, you know, watching the screen. So imagine we're sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day, wearing glasses, or not wearing glasses, and watching 3D images and getting a headache from that.
Well, in the future of that,
right.
What is I don't know what they call it now, where they focus something that's three-dimensional?
Like a hologram
Star
type?
Wars,
right, right.
Yeah.
20 years?
Yeah.
Maybe 10, 20 years it'd be out there. You're starting to see it now with the glass, where you can, you know, the smart glass I talked about earlier, where you can kind of interface with everything on just a single panel. Soon, maybe, like I said, 5, 10, 15 years, it'll start being where you'll have basic 3D rendering, where you can kind of manipulate, you know, like if you have a cube, you know, it's kind of starting now actually with like the Microsoft Kinect for the Xbox. You know, you could have not necessarily a real object in your hand, but just kind of spin something, and on the screen it would spin around. So that aspect of it, the input method of it, is already here. The display of it in a 3D model is not. So 5, 10, 15 years maybe, that should be here.
Yes.
A lot of people spend their like repairing computers and taking out viruses. That whole industry of repairing computers and virus detection and fixing the computer, is that going to be around very long?
The question is, will the industry of fixing PCs and getting viruses off the computer be around forever? Yes, but in a different form. You won't be fixing PCs, you'll be fixing mobile phones and tablets and little chips and little glasses that go around your eyes and contact lenses and stuff. So will there be viruses for these? I'm sure. I mean, you're already seeing it in the mobile market now. I mean, one of the most popular apps in the Android market right now is antivirus. It's Lookout. You know, and if you don't have it, I highly recommend it. It's kept me clean a few times. So.
Mike had a comment.
No, just a question. How long will it be before we will be able to go down to the store and buy a really, really fast mobile hotspot, bring it home, put it in the middle of our house, and be essentially connected to the internet and work off of that without cable and all the other stuff?
I would say probably 2.5 to 5 years. 4G is coming out now. That is equivalent to maybe a medium fast DSL line, like you'd get through AT&T. Once that really gets out there and pushed out to everybody, I can only imagine that the 5G or whatever it might be would be a couple years behind it, and that would probably double the speed of that. So you'd be looking at what we would be having on a UVerse connection or a Verizon Fios connection, you know, 25 to 45 megabits a second on your mobile.
How many Gs before we get to, let's say, what would be considered normal cable speeds? Comcast, for example.
4G. 4G for let me put that back. If you go with the full speed cable, like, you know, at everything it can possibly get, like if you wanted to call Comcast up and get their highest tier, that would probably be your 5G. You're currently at about their middle tier right now.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Connect for Windows that's coming out and the developing of that? Is that going to be really, really difficult, like most everything else?
So the question is, the Microsoft Connect for Windows, is it going to be painful to develop for? And I guess what can it be used for? I don't know. I'm not a programmer, unfortunately.
What is it first?
The Connect is, if anybody has seen the Xbox, you have a little camera kind of thing array on the top, and it follows you around in space, in 3D space, so you can control your games using your body as your controller. Similar to the Wii, but without the controllers. So having said that, back when it was released for the Xbox, all the hackers out there, the geeks said, ooh, can we put this into Windows, because it's a Microsoft product. Well, of course it didn't work. You know, they didn't want it to work, but people got it to kind of do a little thing here and there. Windows 8 is supposed to fully support it. The problem is Microsoft has said that they're only going to use it for development purposes right now. So even if you do get it, the Connect for Windows 8, you won't be able to do anything commercially viable. His industry will be using it more than we would. They're going to be, it's basically going to be developed for biotechs and aerospace, and really using the 3D modeling and being able to manipulate your objects with your hands. So.
Yes, Linda, and then I'll get you back there.
Charley, I have a question for you. You know this new, so you get your iPhone and now you can get your boarding pass on your iPhone. Well, I'm a little nervous because I always forget to plug my phone in, and so it dies at inopportune times. So I'm always worried that I'm going to get right up to the thing, you know, to check on my airplane, and my phone's going to die, and I'm going to be full. I promise I had it on. So do you think that that's, is it, what do they do when somebody's phone dies when you're trying to keep your boarding pass and get on a flight? I mean, or you should stay with paper like I should.
Okay, the question is about the electronic boarding passes on your phones. What happens if your phone dies? You can go, if you're pre-security, you can go to the kiosk right there in front of the ticket counters, and you can actually print a boarding pass. If you're post-security, all you need to do is you know, go down. If you lose your battery while you're post-security, just go to the ticket counter. You know, they're at the gate, and they can print you up a replacement boarding pass. That's right. Plus, they can pull you up in the computer and verify who you are at the counter. So.
Question back there, yes.
I didn't hear the second half of that, sorry.
Describe your ideal data infrastructure to make all of this mobile, instant now, in my hand possible.
Wow. So the question was, describe my ideal data infrastructure for making all the data available to my phone whenever I want it. I would say cloud. I'm an advocate of cloud computing. I like the idea of everything being in one central spot. Some people obviously don't for security reasons, but I like being able to write a document on my PC, be here on my mobile and pull it up and be able to edit it, or go to Singapore or Tokyo and have access to it without having to tote a big bag of tech with me. Unfortunately, the airports, the security kind of makes that kind of hard for us. So, I mean, as far as the way I would like to see things, that I think that would be most beneficial would definitely be cloud-based. And of course, then you open up, whose cloud are you going to be on? Google's, Apple's, Microsoft's, whoever's. In that aspect, find whichever one works best for you and stick with it until you decide to move. I really can't answer that part. I don't know. I'm sorry.
So how does the cloud work? Yes?
Okay, so the
Do you have
cloud,
to sign up for it and things like that?
generally, yes. If you have a Gmail email address, you already have, you're part of Google's cloud. If you have a Hotmail address, you're part of Microsoft's cloud. If you have whatever it is iPhones give you, you're part of Apple's. So, generally speaking, like if you're on iTunes and you save music on, on the internet, you're using Apple's cloud. If you're on Google and you store your photos or you store your music on Google services, you're on their cloud, essentially.
So you have to be online.
Yes, and you do have to be online for all this.
So if you're not online, you don't have any of that.
Exactly.
If you're not online, you want it in your computer.
Yes, but if you're not online, you're slowly going to be left out, as technology progresses, because it's going to be more and more imperative as time goes by for everybody to be connected somehow everywhere.
Yes.
Last April, I believe, Google came out with a free internet service on your home. Did you hear about that?
Yes, the question is, Google came out with a free internet service, and yes, they did kind of. They, I forget what town it was, but it was in some no-name town out in the middle of nowhere, where they put this really high-speed fiber connection into everywhere. So you could be anywhere in that city and connect at speeds faster than anybody else in America, pretty much. I don't know too much about it, except for that a lot of people liked it, but...
I'm surprised you actually had an answer. I was referring to April Fool's.
I didn't. No, but they actually did. They did take over a city with the broadband. So I mean, it's it is a legitimate question. So.
Yes, Paul. And then I'll get you.
Technology websites are part of your daily read. What do you guys read?
So the question was for all of the speakers, which technology websites are part of your daily read?
Me personally, I read Engadget. I read IO9. I read Android Central. I read what used to be called the iPhone blog, although they've recently rebranded to something else, and I can't quite remember what it was because it's been a few days since I've been there. And CNET.
I'm too busy reading FAA regulations to do anything like that.
I read BioWorld Today, which is basically just talks about all the deals that happened within the last 24 hours. It comes out every 24 hours and what the deals are, the size of the deals, who the different licensees and different technologies are. And the other is something called BioSmart, which is put out by the Biotechnology Industry Organization, Bio. Those are the two that I look at every day.
How many things do you see in that first daily publication?
That first daily publication, you will generally see at least 5 deals, and then there are also sort of subsections of clinical studies that are being driven through the process. So it's really right in the space that I work.
Engadget, was that it?
Yes, Engadget. Oh, his?
Oh, sorry. BioWorld.
BioWorld today. It's not cheap. It comes out every day. You can get it via fax or via your computer. But it's every day. There's gonna 5 days a week. You're gonna get it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the most exciting things dealing with computers, and this wasn't the CES show. I read a lot of this stuff on the internet, okay? And I wanted your opinion. 3D printing, solid three-dimensional objects. They have 2 kits available right now, functional kits, for about $1,500 that will print three-dimensional objects. What's your opinion of this?
For what use?
Oh, you can print like chess sets. You can print a whole chess set, three-dimensional.
So the question's about 3D printing.
What are you going to print it on?
I think it's a stepping stone to something a little bit bigger. I'm thinking you might be able to answer this a little bit better with programmable matter and such, but I'll let you go into it. But I do think that for right now it is a decent stepping stone, but I don't think it's going to be here for very long, mainly because of the cost and the abilities to the mediums to actually print on. So.
A big deal in the surgical and medical device fields are prototypes. Okay, getting a prototype up and quick for a quick evaluation and just some general testing. I've seen some of these 3D printers actually put together some things that have even have some gears and things in them that actually do provide you a prototype for a little bit of testing and modification.
So they don't print on paper? No.
They don't. They actually use some sort of, I'm going to say it's a powder. It comes out of a box almost the way it prints. So, but it's a powder that gets properly congealed in the right configuration. Think of it as a lot of pages on top of each other.
That sounds very Willy Wonka-ish, sort of. Just spits it out with a good sound effect.
You can actually print in powdered metal.
Yeah, that's what it is. I don't know what
you can print ears and all kinds of things.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the age of social networking, everybody's on Facebook. Can you tell us a little bit about privacy? How safe it is to share with friends their private information? Is that easy to intercept the hacker?
So the question is, how easy is it for somebody to get a hold of your information on Facebook and hack into it? As far as hacking into it, I would make the assumption it's probably pretty hard. As far as people seeing what you've posted accidentally or seeing everything that you've put on there, very easy. I generally tell people, unless you want your mom to see it or your boss to see it, either wall it off so only certain people can see it or don't post it at all.
Questions? Yes, sir.
My impression is a lot of the biological research is creating really thorny questions for the scientific community in terms of just general human knowledge. What can happen? What can't happen? Like if one of the going into these issues in his line of work, he actually does have to discover his knowledge. And he has these general ideas of what should be technical and what shouldn't be. For example, I've heard how to clean up through red tape I made and want to have those kinds of things. Does he run into any of those kind of issues? What can
Do you hear that, Mike? No. So the question was, what experience have you had running into things that are patentable or not patentable in terms of the types of things like knowledge and data and ideas versus material? So kind of where we are right now.
Well, I'm not a patent attorney, but there are life forms that cannot be patented. Okay, that's one thing you can't that's one area you can't go into. there might be some maybe some newly genetically generated organisms that might have some chance of you know, some, let's say, oil-eating bacteria that can be used to clean up oil slicks and things like this that might have some opportunity for both use as well as composition type of patents. But I don't know, it's, you know, it's, we could spend the entire evening sort of talking about that question in general. I'd be happy to follow up with you afterwards.
You can patent an improvement on a previous patent, can you not?
You can patent improvements on previous patents, yes. New uses for existing drugs is a great way to actually generate patents and new therapeutics into the market.
I think I heard someone over here say they had a question a minute ago. A female voice floating through. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, a few years back, I worked in the landing gear division, and I just have to know, are they still making aircraft and military devices to sell overseas?
Okay, the question is, are they still making military devices and landing gears to sell overseas? I really can't answer that. What I can tell you though is a lot of the companies that we have now in the aerospace industry are actually owned by other countries, and they're operating out of the United States. A good example is China has bought a lot of our aerospace industry. Of course, we've got Dassault Falcon that actually has a finishing center here, so they build the airplane in France, fly it here, and then we do all the paint and interior right here at Little Rock. Now Hawker Beach, they have a finishing center here, and they basically build up in Wichita and fly it down here to do the interior and the paint. So, you know, unfortunately, a lot of our technology is going to China, and we're seeing a lot more acquisitions by the Chinese, and it's really got a lot of people concerned as far as the aerospace industry.
Well, guys, we are out of time. If you would please join me one last time, thanking our panelists, Dietrich Duke, Charles Jones, and Mike Douglas. You guys were a wonderful audience. We have to tear down our area up here so the band can come in. They're a fantastic group. If you can stay for a few minutes, please do. It's a real treat. If you have some questions for the speakers, kind of move into the audience area, and hopefully we'll see you next month for the Science of Sleep. Thank you all.